welcome everybody to the 25th of May 2026 presentation or monthly meeting. Today on the agenda, first of all, actually, I wanted to update people on a number of buses. You might know that OC Transport has a shortage of buses. The e-buses are coming in really fast now. I think this represents 2 months though, but 21 more buses on the roads, right? So there's 111 as of May 14th. And I think I saw 3 of them on the way here, so it's looking good. Anyways, as for the agenda, we'll start with Chris, that's going to talk about heat pump technology. And then Craig is going to talk about Tesla self-driving. I saw the presentation, pretty interesting content, and should stimulate discussion, I think. Then we'll do the news as usual with Mike, and then pass in future events and roundtable, obviously. So, Chris, if you want to step up.
Thanks for having me. If you happen to have seen or attended the cafes presentation that Aaron gave a couple of weeks ago, there's going to be a lot of repeat material here because we kind of update these every once in a while, unless there's like a request for nails. But if you haven't heard that, then you're in for a treat. It's gonna be great. So yeah, just gonna give you a little primer in terms of what the latest heat pump, cold climate heat pumps technology is in Ottawa and available, and things that are coming up. So I'm Chris, co-founded Electrify 613 in 2011, 2020-ish, somewhere around there, with a friend. We're a home electrification community. Got 500, 600 plus members at this point. A place to share contractor recommendations, equipment recommendations, just get an honest second opinion from other homeowners who have installed heat pumps or hot water heaters or electrified their homes or solar, all those things. Electric vehicles as well. A lot of folks in there as well. So which I met some of you in there. And yeah, just a sort of a peer-to-peer trusted place to get advice that isn't the salesperson that shows up at your door trying to convince you that you shouldn't get a heat pump and you're going to freeze in the winter, because that's absolutely not true. What else we got here? I'm primarily going to talk about air source heat pumps. Air source heat pumps take air from outside and compress it and basically extract the heat from the outside air and bring it into your house. Or in the summer, the direction reverses and you're extracting hot air from inside your house and sending it outside. That differs from ground source heat pumps, which are a lot less common in Ottawa and generally a lot more expensive to install. Just the upfront, they're definitely like have a better performance in cold weather, but you have to dig a big loop, and it's quite the upfront expense. And air source heat pumps are pretty much a drop in, you're good to go. So the biggest question I think people kind of come across is, do air source heat pumps work in the cold? The answer is yes, absolutely. Current cold climate heat pumps can maintain almost full heating output down to minus 25 degrees Celsius and continue operating to minus 30 and below. And if needed, you can have a supplemental backup heat source. It can be a gas furnace, it can be electric heat kit that goes inside the air handler. Technically it can be a fireplace, it can be any other source of heat, but in general, for drop-in places where we're doing a full electrification, people are either sticking in a heat pump with a backup gas furnace or just go all electric. And there's a resistance heat kit that slides into the air handler. It's really easy. You don't need like a second furnace, which is some confusion around there of like, I need backup heat, I need a whole. It's like, you don't need a whole electric furnace. It's part of the unit. It's pretty drop-in. Takes up pretty much the same amount of space that your existing probably gas furnace takes up. 2015. A lot of the myths around heat pumps are sort of based around the previous generation of heat pumps, where they would actually lose significant heating capacity below minus 15. And so Energy Star released a cold climate heat pump certification requiring at least 70% heating capacity at minus 15 C. And then in 2021, the DOE launched the Cold Climate Heat Pump Technology Challenge, and they made it so that manufacturers could opt into an additional heat pump performance down to minus 26 Celsius. So a heat pump having a test point below minus 15 Celsius is an indicator that it's designed for cold climate operation. You want to make sure if you're getting a heat pump, you make sure that it's cold climate, unless you're just using it for supplementary heat. But yeah, if you are basing your home's whole heating load on it, You want to make sure that it's going to keep you toasty. So why is this difficult? So this is a little bit of a confusing chart. So we've got sort of the capacity down, the heating capacity here, your temperature going down to minus 25 Celsius over here, and the blue lines are your sort of annual load. Basically, as it gets colder, your heating load logically goes up. You need more heat to heat your home. And so there's a sort of a threshold around minus 10, minus 15-ish. The heat pump basically is outputting less heat as it gets colder. That's sort of like this, you run into this place where like the heat pump, is this the max capacity? Yeah, so the max capacity heat pump is sort of declining as it gets colder at the same time that your home actually needs more heat, right, to stay warm. So that's what makes this a difficult challenge. And, the rest of the year, you've got plenty of heating capacity. It's only in those sort of colder temperatures where you need potentially backup heat. So in terms of what are some heat pump technology improvements that have been made, these are sort of newer things in the last, 5 or 10 years. Variable speed inverter compressors. So this, instead of running at one fixed speed, like say your single stage gas furnace that you might have that's like 15 or 20 years old, it's on or it's off, and it either gives you a lot of heat or no heat. And then sort of since then, they sort of had two-stage gas furnaces where it's kind of like it's a little bit on or it's fully on. And so what you get with a variable speed inverter compressor is that it can ramp up continuously to match heating demand and sort of ramp down as need to match whatever the demand is that it's trying to reach, whether it's heating or cooling. So this allows large compressors to throttle down in warmer weather while still having sufficient capacity in colder climate conditions. Another cool thing is called enhanced vapor injection. So it basically partway through the compression cycle injects additional refrigerant, and that kind of compresses the refrigerant, and the refrigerant gets compressed, it gets hot, and then the heat's released on the coil, and that kind of gives you an extra heating boost as you get down to low ambient temperatures. Another thing too is advanced defrost algorithms. So intelligent control is basically a sensor that figures out the optimal time based on humidity, temperature, and load when to defrost the outdoor coil. So the coils will sort of get ice on them in the winter, right? And so if that sort of builds up and builds up and builds up, it can't actually work very well. And so there's a defrost cycle on the outdoor unit where it'll actually kind of run the heat pump in reverse, or using a heating coil or a little pan heater thing, and it'll heat up the coils so that it melts all the frost off. So basically like the same you do like running your air conditioner. When your air conditioner gets hot, same deal, it's going to melt all the condensation. And it's condensation and then it freezes. So that's kind of what you run into. Newer heat pumps will have advanced defrost algorithms instead of a timer. So like some of your lower end, cheaper heat pumps, places where they start to cut corners and like why these, the upper end are more expensive, are things like the defrost algorithms. So it's going to know when it needs to defrost and defrost appropriately, versus the cheaper ones are generally using timers. So it'll just be like, oh, I'm going to turn the thing on for like 30 minutes and then turn it off and like, shrug emoji, hopefully it's defrosted. And that's not always the case. So here's some rough sort of numbers. Mitsubishi equipment, they have a 36,000, that's like a 3-ton hyperheat heat pump unit. It's dual fan. Equipment cost is roughly like $8,000 ish. Don't confuse that with the install cost, because like there's a lot of stuff to go towards installing them, but like that's sort of your ballpark equipment price. It's rated down to minus 25 Celsius. So basically it can do 84% of its rated capacity at minus 25 degrees Celsius, and is still 183% efficient at minus 25. So that's sort of like for each unit of energy you put into it, it's going to give you 183% units of heat out the other side. Another unit we install for sort of a medium tier, I'd say not quite the same level of performance as the Mitsubishi equipment, is the Midea EVOX 3-ton outdoor unit, similar size. It's a smaller unit, so if you have to stick this in front of a window or something and you can't really do the dual fan thing, this is a nice option. See, it's a bit cheaper. Its output is 77% of rated capacity, and its efficiency at minus 30 is 160%. So these are both decently performing units. So yeah, will these get better? Yes, I think like everything, it's just always evolving and things are getting better. New improvements are coming out. But for climates like Ottawa and even warmer climates, they don't really need to, right? They're perfectly adequate for heating and cooling in Ottawa. Like I said, in terms of the price, the heat pump itself is really only like 20 to 40% of the total expense. So like they're not going to get like drastically cheaper or anything. And skilled labor really is the main cost of making sure that they're installed properly and well. So you are getting that performance versus, someone who maybe doesn't have the same experience installing those. You're not going to necessarily get what you're expecting out of it, right? Let's see. Yeah, North America will likely see more heat pumps in the coming years that can heat water and not just air to replace boilers, which you mentioned earlier. And this is the one I was talking about. This is, I think, available just very recently. So in this case, there's no refrigerant loop. Basically, it is outdoor unit into an indoor, what they call a hydro box, and then into a tank, and then either into your heating or your rad or your hot water. So you get hot water, heating, and radiator, and I guess to some extent cooling, maybe, through one outdoor unit, and there's no, yeah, sorry. I'm pretty sure these are water. I should have done more research. I literally saw it come up yesterday. I was like, oh, we should dig into this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's water. It might be glycol.
Yeah, sorry, one more question. So the heat of the water going through the radiator, how does it compare to a conventional gas or oil boiler?
For the case of this thing, I would think it's essentially equivalent. Like it's quite hot.
It's okay because I know there were some in the UK. There's some devices where the temperature of the water is not very high, so that causes a problem because it can't bring as much heat to the room, right? So
yeah, again, these are brand new to North America. I'm not sure or relatively new. I'm not sure I haven't seen one in a house yet. But I mean, that would be my concern of like if using it for your underfloor heating and your hot water and your radiator, like you might have to size your tank up a bit to have enough heat. Many heat pumps still have poor cold weather performance. So depending on installers that you call, you might run into some of these things. So in terms of the questions to ask contractors, what to watch for, they don't have performance specs or measurements below minus 15 degrees Celsius. It's not a cold climate heat pump, no matter what they tell you. Don't do it. Little or no difference between the minimum and maximum output. So that kind of indicates that they're not good at cycling up and down from a minimum to your heating load. So if they're basically like a single stage-ish unit, that's another sort of red flag because it should be able to ramp up and down, match your heating load. Like I said, no defrost sensor. These often, in my experience, are not sufficient in Ottawa. They can be, but that's when you see all those pictures on heat pump Reddit that are just like like iced out condenser units, and people are panicking, trying to figure out how to melt it. Yeah, get something with a defrost sensor. And then again, if it's another thing to watch out for, if it's not available as a fully electric system, probably implies that like the installer is not experienced in doing fully electric installs, and they're just trying to slam in whatever's cheapest, whatever they got sitting in the back of the truck. So this was an example of, the air temperature this year in January, when it was below minus 25 degrees Celsius. So we got the temperature, chugging along. This is sort of like, this is what it feels like outside. This is one of those, a couple of cold weeks we had there. And then these are like, so the normal low and the normal high. One of these is the high, that's the high. And there's your extreme. It gets cold in Ottawa, but normally it feels colder than it actually is, which is where some of these metrics are like, oh, minus 30. It's like, it feels like it's not actually, minus 30 outside. So the amount of time that Ottawa generally encounters these temperatures is sort of fewer and far between. Got some examples here. House one. Sorry.
Back on that. I think one thing, when you're actually looking at the heat pump, when it is really cold like that, that's usually because of a wind, and that actually improves your heat pump performance even at these lower temperatures. So that you actually have to look at what the real temperature is and all of that. So when we talk about minus 24 as the temperature there, you can see that in Ottawa, it actually doesn't usually get that much below that temperature. It may feel like minus 40 some nights, but that actually, the heat pump is only dealing with the minus 20 temperature.
Exactly.
So that's why we can do heat pumps in Ottawa, because it actually doesn't go below that minus 20 that much.
Yeah, totally. Yep.
I installed a heat pump about a year and a half ago, and I actually did a study. I looked at the hourly temperatures back for about 15 or 20 years, and there's not that many days when it actually goes below minus 15. And even if it does, it doesn't stay there that long. You get a short period, but it doesn't really last that long. So that's the numbers I put on it, and it made so much sense to go to a heat pump.
Totally. Yeah. And yeah, it's exactly right. It's like, it's a handful of hours, a few days of the year that you're actually below that temperature. And that's when you're leaning on your thing. And you might just ride it out, right? Like a lot of folks in the group for fun will just turn off their electric backup heat kit just to see, like, I don't know, I want to nerd out about it, right? Like, you want to, like, how far can we go? How can we, how cold can we go before this thing really can't keep up? That's fun too.
In my case, the installer forgot to configure the backup electric heating. So it was minus 32 a couple of years ago.
February, yeah.
Yeah, it's very unusual, right? But the temperature in the house went down to 14.5, which if it happens every few years, I don't care. It's not a problem. I'll wear an extra sweater or two, right? But they forced us, they wouldn't install it without having a backup source, which to me is a problem, right? Because it drives a couple of things. It drives the cost, but also it requires more electrical capacity for the resistive heater, right?
I run my entire electrified house on a 100 amp circuit, and it works just fine. And when it gets cold, when it hit that minus blah, 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 minus 25, I like my home warm and toasty. So I let it turn on that resistance heat for a whopping 15 minutes in the morning, and my house was toasty for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's a couple things at play there. One is, like, that's why there are backup heat kits, or, you need a backup heat source. A lot of that's building code too, is still building code. Actually, like insurance companies who are like, okay, you were required to make sure that this home can be heated up to whatever the 21, whatever the threshold is, like, continually. And so because of that, everyone's scared to be like, well, given the last generation of heat pumps where, like, literally you couldn't install a heat pump because it absolutely wouldn't work when it was this cold, we're kind of bumping up against this thing where building code says you need resistance heat, or some kind of some kind of backup heat, which it's probably safe to do, and it's not a big deal to, we have a 3-ton heat pump on a 100 amp panel, and there are load sharing devices you can use now that are approved for managing that. If it's like, okay, we're not going to turn on, I don't know, the hot tub or something with the same time that your electric backup resistance heat kit is going, right? Like, you can manage those loads the same way you do for, like, EV charging. So those are all kind of solved problems. It is kind of annoying when you're like, hey, we gotta, so I don't know. The panel upgrade problem is mostly solved at this point. I haven't seen a heat pump installed where they've, like, required an electrical service upgrade in, like, 3 or 4 years at this point. Obviously, you have a bunch of different loads, and you've got, like, some crazy charging scenarios or heat or hot tubs and things you want to run. Then sure, but, like, you absolutely don't need to upgrade your service to install a heat pump at this point. So let's go to this one. So this was a 1902 house with a heat pump and a gas furnace, so a quote unquote hybrid install. So this was we actually have sensors in the supply ductwork, and so we can measure exactly. So if we kind of flip back here, this should be the same as 10 a.m. Did we line these up properly? We did. Yeah, so this is the air temperature. So you can see, like, whatever, when it got colder, temperature dropped a little bit. No, that's at the supply. That's at this like right at the air handler, so where the air is coming out. So yeah, that's not going to be your like your house isn't on fire. Yeah, no, what comes out of the vent is going to be a lot lower than that. But this is just like when it comes out as it distributes through the vents, kind of go. So is the gas. I'm sure, yeah. So you can see like here, if it's slid down here, then the gas is going to kick in to bring it back up, and then so you get like bigger spikes with gas. Here's a heat pump and electric auxiliary heat kit. So you can see the spikes are not as spiky, but also a little more consistent, I guess. Sorry, and this is and again, this is a 1950 house. House with 1950. So a lot of this is like kind of demonstrating the envelope improvements, right? So you have this guy that's like really drops when it gets really cold. This guy that drops a lot less, and then this guy, which is I think is almost net zero home. Basically pretty easy. So depending on this just to show sort of like the impacts of like air sealing and insulation. If you have to choose between air sealing and insulation, always choose air sealing because that's just how the air gets out. And so if you can keep the heat in with the air sealing, and then like try to bulk it up with some insulation after the fact. Non-technology factors for heat pump performance. So these are things that you should consider regarding heat pump performance. So like system design and equipment selection, installation quality and setup, which I kind of touched on. User perception and expectations. And so I guess I'm trying to remember what we were talking about with this. Sort of around like it's heat pumps feel, I guess the one thing I noticed when we install a heat pump is like, and you kind of hear this, is that heat pumps are a more comfortable kind of heat, which is a really hard thing to explain when you're just used to a gas furnace coming on and sitting beside the vent, and you get blasted with, super hot, like gas furnace heat. I don't know any other way to describe it at this point. But with a heat pump, like the output temperature is a lot lower, which means it runs longer. It spreads around your house continually. So it's mixing for longer. And so just the temperature in general of the home ends up being a lot nicer. It's even, right? Because you don't have it's consistent. You don't have like the hot spots and cold spots because it's just running all the time and just keeping you toasty.
Question: is there any of the Ecobee or any of those types of Nest thermostats that are able to be smart to be able to figure out whether with the backup heat sources based on the temperature? So if it is minus 25, okay, fine, I'll let you go to the gas, because then it might actually be slightly cheaper. But also there's the time of use and all of this sort of stuff. Like when I looked at it sort of a year ago, I was very disappointed in how bad the smart supposedly thermostats were at understanding time of use and understanding the differences and all of that. And I ended up just turning off all of my going to the backup heat sources. So are you aware of anything like that? Have any of them gotten any better yet?
I wish I could say yes. The one thing we noticed is like, depending on the heat pump manufacturer, a lot of times the first party controller, even though they're not smart, even though they're not, integrated with whatever your time of use rates are, or, they have, like, for instance, the Mitsubishi controllers, they have an add-on Wi-Fi thing that you can use that gives you sort of, the smart control you're probably used to with an Ecobee. But I would say like a lot of cases, the Ecobee thermostats, if you add them to a system that is sort of like not designed for that, you're basically turning your like really smart dynamic heat pump controller thermostat thing into a dumb two-stage smart thermostat, and you're kind of gutting all of the sensor data that it gets from, the outdoor unit has temperature sensors on it, the indoor unit has temperature, like it's smart and it's communicating. And so if you basically rip that out and swap in an Ecobee, oftentimes you'll end up with like a worse experience. But people are used to them. definitely on a gas furnace scenario, you know, we had an Ecobee, we had a Nest before that, and it was great. And I got really used to like going and changing the temperature or swapping this. And we're about, I don't know, maybe, I guess we installed in February. So I don't know, 6 months into, at our home, at least, there was like a nice first person experience of like just trying out the Mitsubishi controller with the smart, but for the most part, you just leave it and it's solid. Like you don't have to do anything, which is a weird thing to get used to. It's just like set it, forget it. Maybe you turn it down a degree or two. You can have a schedule that like drops a degree or two at night, but generally more than that, it's like it's going to start trying to ramp up to meet your set point. So set it, leave it alone. So yeah, nothing yet. I'm hoping something drops that.
Yeah, in my experience, Ecobees are way too eager to toss the gas on. Yeah, I had to shut my gas off.
The first year I had my Ecobee, I used a lot of gas the first year, and I was like, what the hell, you know? And then did a little more research and figured it out. And last year, as I say, I used like, you know, $30 worth of gas the entire winter. But that was, I really had to get into the Ecobee guts to make sure that it wouldn't turn on the gas.
I have the same experience. I have a question for Chris. So I'm all in on electric. Shut off my gas. I even have an electric barbecue. When my installer, who's just kind of a normal HVAC guy, installed the heat pump, he was like, "Oh, don't run this below -15. It's hard on the heat pumps." I'm gonna triple check. I'm reasonably sure it's cold climate, but yeah, he was like, "Oh, don't run it too low because it's hard on the heat pump." Is that true? I do not have a Zuba, but it's got the same refrigerant as yours, so at least it should be cold climate compatible, at least. Like,
yeah, I mean, the only scenario I could see that like if it's like I don't know, a certain manufacturers that might be true. It's like, yes, you're going to use the motor, but these are ECM motors, like they're designed to run all long time, like consistently up and down. And so like, I don't know, that feels like if you have a car and you're like, don't use the brakes too much because it wears on the brake pads. It's
or
like,
don't go above 60.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
so this winter, I mean, we were particularly cold this winter, and I finally managed to figure out how to turn off the gas in the Ecobee, and we were reasonably comfortable most of the time. We had a space heater we plugged in like a day or two, and that was it. So yeah, I mean, we were happy with it. And hey, if I burn it to the ground, well, I'll just install another one. Yeah.
I have a Mitsubishi mini split, and it's rated down to -15, and at -15 exactly at the source where it measures it, it just doesn't run. It just shuts the louvers on the inside down. It just turns it off, and then when it goes back above -15, it all comes on. So it's all automatic. It doesn't, I've never heard of any damage that could occur, and my son-in-law installed it. So he said, yeah, just run it.
yeah, there are like lockout points where you can say like this will turn off at a certain temperature. So some installers will do that, but if it's a cold climate unit, there's nothing like, it's not going to hurt it to run. You know, it's going to be running hard, right? It's going to be doing what it's designed to do. And that's obviously like long-term has some wear and tear, but that's motors, that's machinery. That's what they're designed for. Yeah.
I have a graph from Ecobee there of this was January this year, and we used gas for from basically the 9th to the 17th, a bit less heat pump, but that's different from the past couple of years. We had the peak pump put 4 winters on it, I think. When they put it in, it was -15, but Denise is now ultra low overnight, 2.5 cents electricity. And I kind of explained that to him, and gas is always the same. So he changed it to -20. And I tried to keep the heat pump running all night at 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And he didn't claim it was breaking the unit. He claimed that they picked -15 because they look at the price of gas and price of electricity, and they try to give you the cheapest electricity, is why he said they picked. So ours is now set to minus 20, but it's still burning. The heat pump rarely runs more than 10 hours a day until the gas comes on, and I can't find a way of messing with that. What I do, or one thing we do, is that when 5 o'clock and the electricity goes to 30 cents a kilowatt hour, we drop the temperature down to 15 and leave it there till 9 o'clock at night when the temperature goes down to 8 cents a kilowatt hour. Because to run the heat pump during that time at 30 cents a kilowatt hour is a lot more expensive than gas. And if you set it down to 15, gas never goes on anyway. The house doesn't that. But at 9 o'clock, this thing, when it turns on, detects a 2-degree difference. The control unit in it forces gas. It says more than 2 degrees, I gotta get the gas.
Okay, so,
Because they set it that way.
yeah,
because of the price.
okay, so we're gonna have to wrap up this section. You have a question, I have a question, and we'll go to the next presentation. Okay, so my question is, I have a energy recovery ventilator that has a controller, and I have a Zuba Mitsubishi heat pump that's got a separate controller.
Yep.
Is there something that exists to integrate the two?
Yep, I have the same thing. There's an interlock wire
Okay.
that you install basically between the Zuba and the ERV,
Okay,
HRV, and it'll basically tell it when the fan is on. It basically all it needs to know, or it knows to say, hey, this thing's running, go to make sure that you're running the fan on like a low speed or
Okay.
whatever you want. Yeah.
I'll contact you after about that. Okay, so, okay.
I was just going to add a comment to everyone who has a thermostat that doesn't easily let you adjust it. So we have a heat pump with a natural gas furnace, and our thermostat, it's wide open. You can go in there and set your threshold. Super easy. Decide whether you want more gas, more heat pump, less heat pump, set your temperature, and it will just run the program super easy. I'm not going to say a brand name right now, but after the meeting, I will absolutely provide those details if anybody's interested. And yeah, when I noticed that it was using a little bit too much gas this winter, I basically just went in and adjusted the threshold and said, no, you need to prefer heat pump all the way down to like minus 25.
Yeah, and I guess and one thing I didn't notice is like a lot of these other ones we've been helping out with are the ones that are like all electric. So I canceled my gas in last month. They ripped up my gas meter all the way to the street. Lots of space for activities now where the gas meter used to be. So that's kind of cool. And you can do it. The Enbridge does not make it easy. But use their chatbot, and then we have a whole script on electronic signal
Actually, it
speed.
is pretty easy with the chatbot. Like
It is. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
literally I had no hassles at all last year. It's like I could put the chat in there, took about 20 minutes to get through all the questions. They did the lockout, and then they came back.
It's
ripped
like
up my lawn.
relatively easy. Like they basically told me they don't do that 3 times until I quoted the OEB chunk that says like the OEB requires that you remove the gas without any cost to the customer. And then they like quickly silently moved on to like, okay, let's get you. I was like, so this is so shady, you guys. Yeah. Anyways, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
So let me address the elephant in the room. I'm probably the closest thing this group has to an Elon Musk fanboy, president of the chapter, or whatever you want to call it. And the reality is, I am despise what he has done with Twitter and social media. I am despondent about the American political system and how he has ruined it and caused an incompetent president to be elected. So I am no fan of Elon Musk and his politics. But unfortunately, we have a situation that he's done it again. He has taken the world to a new place and technologically, even if we don't like his politics. Oops, wrong button. We as humans are not perfect drivers. We can be good drivers most of the time, but we get distracted easily. And unfortunately, that causes a lot of deaths. In Canada, 1,900 people have died every year on the roads for the last 5 years. And In the United States, it's 39,000 that are dying on the roads. 1.2 million people die every year on the roads around the world. And that's just the deaths. You can see the statistics for serious injuries and accidents.
Just a quick comment on this. If you look at the population of the US versus Canada, they have 10 times more people, but look at the numbers there. They have more than 10 times more deaths, right?
Yes.
That has to do with regulations and safety standards and all that in Canada that are much better. Okay?
It is, yes, that is true. And quality of the cars, like the reselling of cars and safety on reselling and all of that. So the point being, though, that we humans, and every one of those people is someone like my cousin, who was driving home, driving to work when someone driving home fell asleep, crossed the line, and ran into her car and killed her instantly.
Oh.
Her family, her kids are devastated. Her kids are not doing well now, 10 years later, because of her loss. The deaths on the roads are real. They cause real destruction to families, and we have an ability to change that now. Since FSD, the full FSD has been brought in, there have only been 2 confirmed accidents involving full self-driving vehicles in which there was a death. And both of those were older versions of the FSD software and older hardware. The reality is, as much as I hate to say it, he's done it again. As we have done with the electric car, we're all here because Musk put out an amazing electric vehicle and everybody else came along and is trying to catch up. So FSD supervised beta is in the model that started with the Model 3 and the Model Y is the gold standard. And unfortunately, like electric cars, with the Nissan Leaf and other things, there really isn't anybody else who's even close today. So what changed my mind? How did I really come to realize that Musk had done it? I was driving in Quebec, and I was on an 80-kilometer road. It was a nice sunny day, nothing much going on. And all of a sudden, the car slammed on the brakes. And I had just kind of registered, but didn't really. This little boy over there who was biking on the driveway. And I was like, and the car had figured out that if that boy hadn't stopped or turned at the end of his driveway and had come into the road, we both would have had a really bad day. So it slammed on emergency braking, even though the boy did stop, he did change, and as soon as the car realized that, it moved on. This is both the best part of FSD and the worst part of FSD, because it realizes and sees where there could be accidents where most of us humans don't often see it. And this can cause it to break in times when you and I wouldn't break. Now, 95% of the time, it's like this. The boy turned, there was no accident, and FSD braked for no reason. But it does break when there are problems that we don't see, and it can save lives. And that is the people I have talked with online and the videos I've seen and people I've talked to have FSD and use it, they all agree that the biggest problem with FSD is it's too cautious often, it breaks too often, it's too timid for the most part. Not that it's doing things dangerous anymore. Now, that isn't always been true. And there's another problem with FSD, and that is it's very different than autopilot. Tesla has this naming thing that is the bane of my existence. They have what they called autopilot in the beginning, autopilot 1, and then basic autopilot. And the difference between autopilot and FSD is the difference between an EV6 and a Nissan Leaf. The autopilot is a very basic piece of software and has nothing to do, it is not the same as FSD. Enhanced autopilot, I only put on this list because it's what the people who are going, who are competing, if you are going to the other manufacturers, essentially most of them are putting out an enhanced autopilot competitor. Tesla only sold enhanced autopilot briefly, and it might be available on a few resales. If you were looking at a used Tesla EV, you might be able to get an enhanced autopilot capable, available EV, but they no longer provide that. It's either FSD or nothing now. So what are the capabilities? Traffic aware cruise control is the big one that everybody's got. Lane centering and holding. Tesla's gone so much towards they want you to buy FSD or subscribe to FSD that they've now even taken that out. If you buy a new Tesla today, you don't even get lane centering and lane holding on a new Tesla EV.
I think that it also includes the traffic aware, like the adaptive cruise control, right? Is not.
He told me I have not personally think. He said that the cruise control is definitely still there. I thought the traffic aware was still there as well, but that one I would verify. But it's definitely the lane handling is gone now on a brand new without paying for the FSD. But I thought the traffic aware was still there. Now, so the auto lane changing, that is if you're on a 4-lane highway, it'll pass the car in front. If the car in front's doing 90 and you want to do 100 on a 4-lane highway. Auto park and summon, that's in parking lots and different things like that, where it will help park and it will summon the car to you and all of that. And then the city streets, that's the big one. Now, back to my desks, most of the deaths don't actually happen on city streets. They actually are where a lot of the accidents happen. There's a lot of, we get into a lot of accidents on city streets. And Musk is the only one that is unfortunately even trying to do anything on city streets today. And that is unfortunate. Now, I'm sure everybody in this room knows that Musk has promised since 2016 that next year you will be able to fall asleep in the back of your Tesla and it will drive you somewhere. And the reality is you actually can do that today. Now, it isn't your Tesla, but if you get on a plane and you fly to Austin, Texas, and you hire one of the robo-taxis, you can fall asleep in the back of a robo-taxi and it can drive you around Austin, Texas. So the point is that if you bring your own, if you drive to Austin, Texas, you can't do that yet, but it's coming. When it's coming? Next year? As I mentioned, one of the biggest problems Tesla also has is their hardware ability. Raymond, I don't know what your old S, was it hardware 1 or was it hardware 2? In the old, was it Mobileye? Was it the Tesla system? As I say, those were the old Model S's that had the hardware 1 and 2.
I had a 2013. It's not even on there, but I didn't have the hardware to do any of this stuff. Right?
Exactly. No, you didn't have the hardware. And then in 2019 with the Model 3, they brought out hardware 3, and that is the main system. That's the hardware I have on my car, and most Teslas out there have hardware 3 unless they're pretty new, and most of the people running FSD are running it on hardware 3, and that is your main system that can do. I don't touch the wheel. I don't, unless I get to my destination. It isn't great at the last mile, I call it. It sucks in parking lots. It sucks, the last mile and all that kind of stuff. Version 14, hardware 4, is far better at it. They're really starting to refine that last mile. Unfortunately, the hardware 3 cars cannot take the the software, which is the next slide. But anyway, so 2023, the end of 2023, early 2024, they switched over to hardware 4. So if people are looking for a used Tesla, you may want to look and see what version of hardware it's running, because that will really change what the experience you can have with with full self-driving. They have announced that 4.5 is coming out with even more processing power, supposedly by the end of the year. And Musk has said that the hardware 5 he is being finalized is only for the robots. We aren't going to need it for cars. I'll believe that when I see it. My guess is probably in 2 or 3 years, we'll probably see hardware 5 in cars as well. But for now, it looks like we can do pretty well with the hardware 4. So one of the biggest problems is there's a lot of videos out there about FSD, and some of them aren't actually FSD, they're autopilot, as I say, which is completely different software, and others are about earlier versions of FSD. The reality is that FSD has been getting better every 3 to 6 months since 2021, 2022, and the versions really matter. It is even bigger than a Windows or iOS updates or whatever. Each version number is a huge increase. But unfortunately, hardware 3 is now locked. They can't bring the newest versions of the software to the hardware because it's just not capable enough to run the latest versions of the software. So the current version 14 software is not available. I'm still running 12.6, but my mother's running 14.3 because she has a hardware 4 car and I've only got a hardware 3 car. And I have been promised, because I paid for full self-driving, my $10,000 several years ago, that eventually I will be upgraded, but that will happen when I'm allowed to fall asleep in my car next year. So Tesla's FSD story is one of continuing software update. And the Tesla's owner's ADAS experience does very much change on whether you're paying for it, which hardware you have, and all of that. Tesla went from pushing to buy FSD when they wanted money to now not even allowing you to buy it for the life of the car and only allowing you to subscribe to it. The other thing, a good analogy, I would say, if you had an iPhone and it said, and Tesla, or the iPhone said, unless you're paying a monthly subscription, you have to only use iOS 6 on your phone. And I know, but that's the equivalent of what Tesla's doing, is they're saying, unless you're paying the monthly amount, you're only allowed to use iOS 6. And then if you have the best hardware, you can, and you're paying the monthly subscription, you can use iOS 17. But if you don't have the good hardware, then you're stuck at iOS, 10 or something like that. So we can make a decision and criticize their business model, and I certainly would be one to agree to that. But that is the reality. Okay. One of the problems that most people are having today with FSD is making it for themselves what they want. How you want to drive, how you want to park your car, how you want to get to your destination is often very different than how I might want to do it. And it might change if I'm in a rush or if I'm, having a lazy Sunday type thing. My mother's best friend is a dog trainer. And what she says is that 80% of the work of the dog trainer isn't actually training the dogs, it's training the people to interact with the dogs. And that is where FSD is starting to get better, especially on the version 14 software. But with these large language models, they tend to have a harder time with individualization. Myself, I like to park in the blue area over there because I always park in the same place. But my wife always likes to park closest to the door. My mother likes to park over in the handicap My friend doesn't like door dings. He will park over in the green spot. We all have a different decision that we might make on where is the best place to park. And it's only now that Tesla's starting to be able to bring in the version 14, the ability to actually choose where to park in a parking lot. And these sorts of differences are starting to come in. My biggest complaint with FSD up until now has been that lack of, it's pretty good, but it doesn't do it exactly the way I would like it done. Well, I picked the Kinetic Costco for a reason. So we are doing to FSD what the people have done to the EV world for a while, and that is we focus on individual deaths or individual issues or a particular problem like range anxiety, and we forget that the reality is it's been solved. For most of us in this room, I'm sure if I say range anxiety, you just roll your eyes and keep on going. And that is the reality of where we are at with the FSD. It's been solved, and yeah, there's a few little problems here and there, but so your question about FSD, and now this is on both hardware 3 and 4 and all versions, including some of the older, not as good versions, it is averaging 5.1 million miles between crashes. We humans tend to average a little under 700,000 miles. So we're talking 7 times better than humans right now. And as I say, that includes hardware 3 and it includes some of the older versions. If you were to take hardware 4 and the latest version 14, I bet you that number be over 10 million. The reality is teen drivers, some of the older, you can get less than 370,000 kilometers per major crash, which this is now getting into 10, 15 times better than these types of drivers. So we are past a point where there's any debate about is it safer or isn't it. As I say, there's only been 2 deaths with FSD. I'm almost close to the end.
Okay, no, finish.
Let me finish, and then I do want to do questions at the end. So I'm sure most of us here would like to say, oh, come on, isn't there somebody that's doing something besides Musk? Can't we find another place? And as I say, if you don't mind a Nissan Leaf version of FSD, then yes, the Blue Cruise, the Super Cruise from GM, Copilot from Mercedes works on highways. It does allow you to pass vehicles. This is me passing this vehicle last week. I test drove the Super Cruise, and it isn't as good as FSD. It isn't as easy to use. It's not as good, but it does, it does work on the highways as well as FSD did 5 years ago. This is the hard truth. As I said, 1.2 million people die every year on our roads, like my cousin. We have the technology, we have the ability to stop that. We can change the fact that people are dying on our roads. It's no longer a question of is the technology there. The question is, are we going to pay for it? Are we going to demand Raymond's point, are we going to demand our governments put in regulations that require companies to put in proper ADAS systems? Right now, you have to, on most of these cars, you have to get the Blue Cruise or the Super Cruise. I was looking for my wife for Bolt EUV, and there's one Bolt EUV available with Super Cruise. There were 6, I think, without Super Cruise available to be bought in the Ottawa area. So even the manufacturers are not pushing this technology. It isn't widely available, and people don't realize how much safer it is. So I would ask if people are looking at it to encourage them to look at these sorts of systems and to get this kind of thing, because it does save lives. And that's what we want to do. So I wish there was a better answer than going with Elon Musk. I wish there was a better way to do this than Elon Musk, but at the end of the day, if you want the gold standard of ADAS systems, unfortunately, they're really outside of China. There is Musk is the only one who's doing the best system on the planet again. Mike, what's your question?
It's 2 points. First point is I did the math, and statistically for the world, it's a 1% fatality rate for the crashes. So if you're in an accident anywhere in the world, it's 1% chance of death. In Canada, it worked out to 0.3%. So that's pretty good odds. I take those odds. I think that's a testament to car engineers. The second thing is about the 2 crashes and the FSD fatalities. Those are the ones that are proven in court, but there's a lawsuit right now ongoing because there have been a lot more fatalities in Teslas with FSD running, but Tesla had a system where it would disengage FSD a moment before impact, so therefore FSD wasn't running at the time of impact, which was a nice legal loophole that they've been using to get out of it. But there's a class action, so there are actually more than 2 deaths on FSD, assuming that is proven in court as well, like the 2 that have already been proven. So
And are you? I looked briefly at that. I thought that some of those were autopilot and not FSD. So there's a there is a question between autopilot. As I say, autopilot.
Sure, but the fact is
50.
Tesla is not being honest or truthful with the statistics, so I wouldn't take those to the bank just yet.
Yeah, but and as I say, the difference between as it gets better, is it?
But if those numbers are not believable, right, and the fatality number is much higher, then you can't say definitively that it's 7 times safer. It could even be 14 times less safe, right? We don't know because the numbers that Tesla is providing are garbage, right? So you can't make the argument.
I guess the anecdotal, I don't know anybody who is running FSD on a hardware 4 car who thinks that they can drive better than a hardware 4
Sure.
Tesla FSD
But then
car.
the intermittent wipers still isn't fixed. So like,
Okay,
how? Anyway.
so we're gonna have to move on. If there's any comments or questions about the substance of the presentation, not opinions, but what
You had a question before.
No, I have the mic first, so I wanted to. Hold on a second. So I understand what you said about what Tesla is doing.
Yeah.
But I disagree with you on the fact that Tesla is either the only one or the best systems in the world. There's some Chinese systems that are better.
I said outside of China. I kept saying I did.
You said that once at the end.
Well, okay.
But and there's Waymo and others that are doing the exact same thing. So it's not just Tesla.
But you can't buy a Waymo car.
No, but they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, let me put my outside of China for a car you can buy. Tesla is the only one who's doing streets at the level that they're doing it at, and is only one that's doing lights and turns and navigation at the level they're doing.
Okay, so the one-legged, one-eyed person on the Thursday is okay, but everybody else is different. There's too many exceptions in there. It has to be more general, in my opinion. And if you look more generally.
What do you mean more generally? I mean, Tesla's doing it, is doing streets. Nobody else is doing streets.
Waymo is doing streets.
Can we take
But you
this
can't buy
off?
it.
Can we take
One
this
more
offline?
question, and then we'll
Okay.
go to the
So
next.
I come from a very scientific background. Okay. There's a big difference between correlation and causation statistically. Okay.
Of course.
So it was an interesting presentation, but I would like to see the actual statistics on this that would actually show causation, which is very difficult to show.
It is. And I will give Mike his point that Tesla's been about what they have released. So
you got to look at the data, and you have to look at how that data was collected.
Exactly.
Okay, because you can throw a lot of bit bias into data and throw
Absolutely.
that and come up with a study that's absolute, I'm sorry for the term, bullshit. Okay.
Agreed.
So,
And it's one of the points I didn't get to was one of the problems with the robotaxi. There's an article out there that talks about how many accidents the robotaxi's been in, and that is part of it, because one of the things that happens is it does all this emergency braking and people hit the robotaxis, and so therefore the robotaxis have actually been in more accidents than the average. But again, it's mostly they're getting hit as opposed to them hitting anybody else.
So transportation engineering is a real thing. Okay.
Mhm.
Are there any transportation engineers who are actually looking at the statistics of this?
I am not aware of that Tesla's opened that data up enough that they can.
What a great research opportunity.
I'm sure some people are looking at it. There's
I'm sure
no
they are.
doubt there's people
Yeah.
looking at it. But anyways, let's move on to the next presentation. And thanks very much, Craig.
As they say, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. This clicker sucks.
Says the guy who works for Stats Canada, right?
Shh, don't tell. All right, so for the news, I'm starting off with some good things because I want to be optimistic for once. So wind and solar have, for the first time in history, generated more power globally than gas for the entire month of April. So take a bow, clean energy. So according to new energy analysis from Ember, wind and solar produced a combined 22% of the world's electricity, while gas only did 20%. So suck it, gas. The numbers are there, but that's a 13% year-over-year increase. No, it's for the month of April, so it would be Hormuz definitely played a role.
Yeah, but I don't believe Hormuz would have played a role because
well, it played a bit of a role because gas is more expensive, so that people are less inclined to use it. But if you look at the chart, solar and wind there's a chart in the Ember report if you want. There's a link in the file there. But basically, solar and wind have been gaining, over time, and it's the first time they've crossed over. Gas has been pretty flat throughout the past decade or so.
Yes.
And solar and wind are growing. Nuclear is low, and hydro's stable, and so yeah.
One small caveat is that April is a shoulder season, right? So there's less energy.
There's that too. No, and the variability is in there, but I mean, we will see that solar and wind will continue to outperform gas from now on because the curve is upwards. It's up and to the right, so we're good. All right. According to the International Energy Agency, global EV sales are set for another record this year. And these people are not fans of EVs, so the fact that they're even admitting it is probably telling. They're expected to hit 23 million vehicles in 2026, or 30% of all new cars sold in the world. Not 30% in Canada or the US because we are knuckle-dragging mouth breathers, but the rest of the world is advancing into the future without us, and so they are going to be a third of the new cars. Last year it was 20 million, or about a quarter of all new cars. So progress. I think we're beyond the early majority or whatever, early adopters. Okay, another cool thing, just 1% of EV models accounted for a huge number of EV sales. The leading two are, any guesses? Any guesses? Tesla Model Y and Model 3. Correct, Craig. So Model Y by a country mile at 8% of all EV sales globally. 3.6% of EVs were Model 3 globally. And then the other bunch are Chinese. Interestingly, every other car on this list is under $10,000. So there you go. But the BYD Seagull's in there at 3%, and we might actually get that in Canada, so that'll be good. I've never heard of the Hongguang Mini, so...
It's a very small, very slow car.
Very small, very slow.
One of those city cars.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Geom whatever. So anyway, these are obviously they're Chinese, but China's the largest car market. 93%, this is a shock to no one in this room. 93% of electric truck operators said they're not going back to diesel. What? Are you kidding me? EVs are better? No. So the respondents of the survey, which was done by the Applied Ecology, the German Institute of Applied Ecology, did a survey. They surveyed 57 companies, which collectively owned over 200 electric trucks. 93% of owners were satisfied or very satisfied with their electric trucks, and 40% of truck fleets in the survey covered more than 500 kilometers in a day. So these are not like just your short haul, last mile stuff. These are like actual, well, I mean, European big rigs, but Europe. Chinese EVs are landing here in Canada. if you come to Cars and Coffee, you'll have met Greg from Montreal, who drives his hilarious little Fiat 500 from Montreal to Ottawa to do coffee with us for some reason. And so this is his picture in the background. He took this. He drove down to Toronto to take a picture of the like 5 Chinese EVs that showed up in Toronto. And he did a whole little video on them if you want to go check it out on his YouTube channel. But basically, the JQ and Omotas are here. And they're presumably for testing. But yeah, in a survey from Auto Pacific, which I've never heard of, half of Canadian car buyers would consider a Chinese EV. So, I mean, obviously, 67% of Canadian new vehicle shoppers are very familiar or somewhat familiar with Chinese auto brands, which I am suspicious of, because when you talk about it to people, most people are like, don't know that, you know, Polestar is made in China and Land Rovers are Chinese. So, Model 3 is made in China, right? Like, so I don't know about these numbers, but anyway, it's cute. Canada is also set to receive the first 18 Electras. I don't know how to pronounce that, Lotus, but it's a Lotus. It's $120,000 Canadian. So good luck with that. It was launched on April 24th. On May 7th, the first 18 vehicles left Shanghai, bound for presumably Vancouver. No word on if they've arrived yet, but I mean, how long does it take on a boat, right? 2 weeks? Anyway, it's cool. So your first Chinese EVs are on the way. This silhouette could be Lucid's answer to the Model Y. It's called the Lucid Cosmos. There have been some spy shots of it testing against a Model Y. So it was in camouflage next to a Model Y near Lucid's factory on a test track. So they're apparently promising to price it around or below $50,000 US. So not super cheap, but I mean, it's a Lucid. So what do you expect? And they haven't confirmed whether it's all-wheel drive or rear-wheel drive. I would guess all-wheel drive, probably. But it'll be, you know, a fast-charging, decently efficient car because that's sort of Lucid's thing. But yeah, so look for that in the coming months. And just when Subaru finally got their stuff together and came out with like actual EVs, they've decided that, you know what, we're actually not going to do that anymore because we don't know what we're doing. So they've kind of given up. So they've indefinitely postponed the plans to make an in-house platform. For those not unaware, Toyota owns a huge percentage of Subaru, and Toyota has an EV platform, and Subaru's just been borrowing it for their EVs. So if you buy a Subaru EV, you're basically just buying a Toyota. To the point where like the Subarus are made in the Toyota factory and vice versa a little bit now. But yeah, Subaru was hoping to make its own in-house EV platform. But since they lost a bunch of money and the US is being evil, they've decided to maybe not spend the money and join the likes of Mazda and Honda in their glorious self-destruction. So cool. So I guess Toyota will be the last one standing. Speaking of Honda and other Japanese companies, so Honda has shelved $15 billion worth of investment in Canadian EV production. So they'd already found a site to build the factory, and they'd taken some government money. So I want my tax dollars back, thank you. They were going to make 250,000 vehicles a year in a plant that they were going to build specifically to make EVs. But they've given up. The only EV they had was the Prologue EV, which was based on the GM Blazer EV. It was a better Blazer because it had Apple CarPlay and stuff. But anyway, they canceled that one because why not? And so I guess Honda is destined or like hell-bent on being the next Kodak. So they have no EVs. So if you want a Honda EV, you can't. Even the buttons are sensitive. Volvo canceled the EX30 in the US. It's still available in Canada, though. But they will replace the EX30 with something to be determined. In the US, apparently it didn't sell very well in the US because Americans want gas or something. So they haven't released any details, but the president of Volvo Cars America has said a new car is coming and will be larger than the EX30 because Americans want big. So you can still get the EX30 here because we're a civilized country with laws. It's actually received a price drop, so it gets the rebate. And it's actually the only Volvo that gets the rebate. So if you want a Volvo with a rebate, EX30, it's a good car. It's cool.
So
Raymond.
I was talking to Etienne, the dealer that was at the Gatineau show. This is an incredible deal.
Yeah,
It's
no,
a great car.
EX30 is fantastic.
Yeah.
So go get one and then drive to the US and laugh at them. Be like, gloat. Actually, don't go to the US because you don't want to support fascism. Probably China, actually. I think they're made in China.
Some of them are made in Ghent in Belgium.
In Belgium? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a Chinese company, right? It's owned by Geely, so. Yeah. Well, yeah, in order to be eligible for rebate, it couldn't be China then. It would have to be,
If it's Belgium,
it would have to
probably
be Belgium because we have
qualify.
free trade
Yeah.
with Europe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has to be a country with free trade to get the rebate. The EX60. Okay, so this is really cool. So this is a new car. It's an EX60, sticking with Volvo. It is cheaper than the competing XC60 because, oh my God, plug-in hybrid, right? So now there's literally no reason to buy a plug-in hybrid. Not only is it a dead bridge technology that's completely superfluous, but now it's more expensive than the EVs. So all EX60 versions get 480 kilometers of range or better on a full charge. They all come with NACS. They all charge from 10 to 80% in 16 minutes, which is faster than my Ioniq 5, because they take a peak rate of 370 kilowatts. If you can find a charger with 370 kilowatts, like I will give you a gold star and an internet prize. But yeah, so that's how they did 16 minutes. It's obviously not like you don't sustain 370, but damn, son.
Mike, just a small point there. Yes, it's true. It's very hard to find a charger that will do that. However, if you're at a charger that does 200, you could probably pin it at 200 for the
Oh yeah,
whole
you can.
charge,
Yeah,
right?
because like it'll be
you'll
it's an
charge
800 volt
faster.
car like the Ioniqs or like the EGMP cars. So it is 800 volts. So it will, if you find a charger that's slower, it'll just max it out for the duration, basically. Yeah. The ID Buzz returns with new trims and software fixes and maybe some buttons. So they skipped the 2026 model year, as I mentioned a couple months ago, I think, in one of the news. But the 2027 has been revealed and it has a camper mode. So there's a whole factory installed trim that is camper. It has like tables and beds, and it has a cool little overnight mode, which uses the high voltage battery to run the climate. So you can like have an air conditioned house basically wherever you want. They've also got new colors if you're into that. I know. And then they've, fixed the software because, oh my God. They did. They said they did. I mean, let's assume that, take them at their word for now.
Do you know if they increased the range?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe you can email them and see if they answer. The Volkswagen Golf EV has been pushed back to the end of the decade, and probably by end of the decade, they mean into the 2030s. So they were supposed to debut the new electric Golf in 2028, but the CEO says we don't need that because it's not like it's their best-selling vehicle or anything, the Golf. So yeah, I mean, it was going to be on a new platform that they partnered with Rivian to make. It's facelifted. They've got a new facelifted ID3 hatchback, which is kind of the same as a Golf in a lot of ways, which we don't get here either because America. So anyway, yeah, sorry, Phil. Who has the Golf? Mark has a Golf. Yeah, sorry, Mark. Mazda, who famously doesn't make EVs, has admitted that they haven't even gotten to the hard part of making EVs, which is like planning to make an EV. So they've basically given up without even entering the race. They were supposed to launch their first long range. I put long range EV there because technically they had an EV in the MX-30, but it was they came out in 2021 with 2011 EV specs, if you can believe it. We're talking like 100 kilometers of range in a light breeze with a nice warm day and a flat road, maybe a slight downslope. So it was a ridiculously bad car, which obviously flopped, and it was only on sale for 2 years before they just pulled it out and said, yeah, nobody's buying these. But yeah, they're supposed to make a real EV, but now it's delayed because they didn't take any steps to produce anything. So Mazda has no EVs, and they will join Honda and Subaru in the graveyard of car companies. Okay, and the Tesla corner today is very small because Tesla hasn't been doing anything with cars. They've been busy doing an IPO for insane amounts of money about a rocket company that loses money all the time. But the Model S and X have finished their production. Model S, the last Model S rolled off the line after 14 years from Fremont, along with the last Model X. These were the flagships for Tesla. They were the gold standard. They set the bar. And then Tesla just gave up on them. And so now they're gone, which is really sad because, like, you know, competition's good. And now it's just, if you want a fancy sedan, it's Lucid or nothing, basically. I guess Mercedes exists. Sure. I guess Mercedes is nice. But I mean, if you want like the cool high-end EV thing that's like no compromise, then Lucid's your only game, right? So that's that.
So last slide, right?
That's the last slide for me.
Thank you very much. I find it disappointing that some of the companies, like you said, you know, they're the next Kodak, right? Honda in particular, they're having problems because of EV sales. So what do? They stop doing EV stuff instead of getting on the train. Anyways, so let's talk about future. Okay, so past events, as usual, we had the Kilowatt and Coffee. We had, well, 4, I guess. Oh, we're going to have one this weekend on the 30th of May, right? And we did the Eco Fest in Westport. A couple of comments here. The weather was not good, okay? So it was cloudy and coldish. I think we would have had more people showing up if the weather would be better, but what's that? No, there weren't that many people that came over. I mean, we did have some good conversations with a few people, but a lot of people had EVs already and came to talk to us, right? So we need to reevaluate that. And they had a different location last year. So maybe the other location would be better because the way it was set up, you see the picture on the left there? On the other side of that, where you see the white Tesla, which is Jeff's Tesla, in that lot, there were a bunch of other things and people went there. But I think because of the fence, it didn't come on our side. Okay. So anyways, didn't get as much traffic as we wanted. I put there that we had 3 volunteers requested and got 7. Okay. The reason I say that is that I don't want people to get the impression that we are doing events where you're not busy. Okay. So there's a reason why we put just 3. I'm okay if more people show up. Okay. But be cognizant that we're trying to put numbers there that will, you know, match the demand that we'll have. So you don't spend the day, you know, doing nothing, right? If you want to come and talk and all that, that's fine, right? But don't expect to be busy if it's an event with very few volunteers required. Okay, so upcoming events. Next meeting here, June 29th. Kilowatts and Coffee. So we're going to start moving around a bit because it's summer. June 13th, we have the event that we'll talk about later at the ballpark. June 20th, we need to look at that. So we don't need very many people for June 20th. We need probably 2 or 3 people at a time. So I think we might want to do Kilowatt and Coffee close to that anyways, right? Okay, so it's Richmond, right? So don't know what there is over there, but anyways. So next event, this is an event where I'm going to be part of a panel. Where it doesn't say that anywhere, but anyways, so there's going to be a guided conversation here with OREC, us, and a homeowner that's done the electrification thing, okay, that's electrified their transportation, their heating, and all that stuff, okay? So that's for the community to come over and talk to people who've done this.
Past events. I was on the radio. CKCU.
Yeah, CKCU from
93.1 FM.
Yeah, Carlton U Radio, right? So they have a regular program. It's Sunday mornings, I think, right? Or
No, it's Monday morning. It was
mornings?
the worst. I had to wake up so early on a Monday. It was terrible.
Anyways, okay. So next is the Green Fair that we talked about already a bit. So June 13th at the ballpark. Okay, so what we are looking to do is test drives with a static display, a booth, and we want to work with dealers. Now, for those of you who are on the board, you've seen some of the emails where we're having trouble getting dealers to provide vehicles. There seems to be an issue. This is my guess at this point, but I'll be able to say more once I visited a few dealers. I think the manufacturers are holding back supply because they want to prove, quote unquote, that EVs, there's no demand, exactly, right? But the problem is supply. And I've been saying for a long time, the problem is supply. So anyways, we'll see how that turns out. And I'm going to work with the dealers to see if there's alternatives we could do. I mean, if they don't have a car they could show in their booth, maybe we could find someone who has a car who could show it in the booth and would be happy to do that, right? So anyways, we're going to try to do what we can. We'd like this to be as successful as possible. This is the equivalent event that we used to do at Lansdowne Park in the fall before, okay? It's not as good a location, but it's a pretty good location, okay? There's no foot traffic going through like Lansdowne, but there's lots of cars going by. So it should attract a fair amount of people, more than at Just Foods anyways, right? Just Foods was a bit out of the way, okay? So there'll be more stuff inside. We're supposed to have a series of lectures, which we need to organize. We have a room for the whole day inside where we're going to do lectures, okay? We just have to decide what we're going to cover. We already have the stuff. It's a question of just repeating what we've done before. Yes, Alan?
Yeah, I signed up for the test drives for this event just last night, I think it was.
Okay.
There's only 3 test drivers registered at the moment.
Yeah, so
do we need more people, or?
We need more people. Now, the intent there, when I say test drive there, the intent was you would do test drives with the dealer vehicle, okay? So we'll have to figure out what we could do. I know personally I'll do test drives with my vehicle, but I know a lot of people don't want to do that, so, right? But one other thing we may be asking is if they don't have a bolt to show, maybe we could show your bolt, right? So we'll see what we could do, but I'd really like this to be successful, right? Well, we would want them to register so we know about it, right? But what I intend to do is probably next week sometime is start reaching out to people in the general EV community and start trying to attract people for especially static display. Okay, so but you'll get more on that when we get closer to that. Okay. Now the other event that's happening after June 19th to 21, this is an archery competition. Okay. Now this is interesting from a few perspectives. One of the things we want to do is showcase the ability to power stuff. So we're going to be using EGMP devices or vehicles to power stuff. Okay. But the people, if you think about the people who participate here, and I saw the numbers, I can't remember the numbers. It's hundreds of people anyways. We're going to have sort of like a captive audience that we could talk to. And these are people who are not necessarily EV aware, okay? They're outside the bubble, right? That being said, I don't think we need more than about 3 volunteers per shift. We'll need 2 vehicles per shift, okay? And there'll be 6 shifts, which I'll show a bit later. And you'll see when the choices you have right here. So there's 3 choices. I'll show that in the slide coming up. Not sure when, soon, right there. Okay. So when you pick stuff, you volunteer, there's only 3 choices here. That's because that's the only 3 options. Okay. Here for this one here, it says test drive. Alan, you see you're right there already. I just picked it up right before the meeting. So, there are different options for different events. Okay. So, and if you're not sure which option to take, what I've done here, so V2L power means your EV would be used to provide power. Okay. So I'm trying to give it a bit more detail so that it doesn't seem so abstract to me. It's all very simple and very explainable, right? But to other people, it might not be, right?
A quick question for the
Sure.
sheet. It's not always clear which vehicle people will be bringing, and maybe there's a place for note or something that we could add here where someone can say, yes, test drives, and it's a Bolt, or yes, I'm providing a vehicle for power, and it's this car, like it's a, Silverado EV, Carl, or a
Yeah,
GMP, or whatever.
that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking how to implement it
I don't know.
because for this
You need
event
another
here,
column or something, yeah.
but for this event here, Carl may want to bring the Ioniq 5, and for this one, you may want to bring
Exactly. Don't tie the car to the person. It could be
Yeah.
multiple different vehicles, yeah.
Yeah.
Or two identities.
One of the requirements for this location is a laser printer, and the EGMP cars may not be able to handle that spike. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I have a Bluetti, and it handles 20 amps.
Yeah.
So that would handle the spike.
Okay, so good idea, right? Especially with cars like the Teslas that don't do VDL, right? So anyways, I think this is it. So for other stuff coming up this year, this is a complete list here. There's the Westport Car Show on July 18th. Okay, that'll be about the same as last year, where we're going to have some display cars, and that's about it. Then we have the Avalon Family Barbecue. This barbecue, we had a lot of people last year. So it'll be interesting to go there again. And the Queenswood Heights, we've been doing this for 2 years already. And then Pride. And so these two here, they used to be the same weekend the last 2 years. They're separate weekends, but that means that August is going to be very busy, right? And then we have a Taste of Wellington. And for those who remember that from last year, there were lots of people there also. So I'd like to leverage that number of people to interact more with the public, right? Not sure exactly how to do that and what we're going to do, especially with dealers that don't seem to have cars, because the plan there was to borrow cars from dealers also. But more details on that in the future. So this here reminder, if you're not a member, please join. We could always use the money. Here, this is our YouTube channel, and I checked today, we're at 138 people. Okay, so for those who don't know, all our monthly meetings are on there. There's a bunch of videos that EVS has just published, are really, really good, fairly short videos about all sorts of topics with EVs. What I want to do is link them in here. I haven't asked them about it. I'm sure they're going to be okay. But that'll be, it'll be another thing we could point people at. I can't remember all the topics, but it's typical stuff about EVs, myth busting and that kind of thing. And they're very well done, and they're relatively short, so they're easy to consume. Okay.
And for those of us watching us on YouTube, this is where your video will end. Next time, please join us live, and you can hang out for the roundtable. Bye.